Hi everyone, welcome back to our IELTS writing series. Today we're looking at an IELTS Writing Task 2 opinion essay, also known as an agree or disagree essay. Here is today's task. Some people think that dangerous extreme sports, such as skydiving and rock climbing, should be banned. To what extent do you agree or disagree? To help us generate ideas, let's listen to a short debate between two friends, Sarah and Tom, who have very different views on this topic. As you listen, try to note down arguments for and against banning extreme sports.
You know, I was reading an article about a skydiving accident yesterday and it just made me think, should we really allow these incredibly dangerous sports? I mean, for the safety of people, maybe they should be banned.
Banned? Sarah, that's a bit extreme, isn't it? People know the risks when they sign up for skydiving or rock climbing. It's about personal choice and freedom. Plus, these sports are often highly regulated, with lots of safety protocols in place.
But accidents still happen, Tom. And it's not just the individual. Think about the emergency services, the potential cost to healthcare if someone is seriously injured. It puts a burden on society.
I see your point about the societal cost, but for many, these activities are essential for mental well-being. They offer a unique thrill, a way to push limits and build confidence. It's an important part of their life. Taking that away would be unfair. Besides, isn't life inherently risky? We don't ban driving cars, even though there are accidents.
True, but the level of inherent danger is vastly different. And honestly, some people might be pushed into these things by peer pressure or not fully grasp the severity of the risk. Maybe some form of stricter regulation or age limits could be better than an outright ban, but I still lean towards a ban for the most perilous activities.
I disagree. Education and proper training are the key, not prohibition. If we start banning everything dangerous, where does it end? Life involves calculated risks. It's about empowering individuals to make informed decisions, not restricting their freedom.
That was a great debate. Now let's take a closer look at the two sides of the argument we just heard. First, Sarah supports banning extreme sports. She argues that these activities carry a high risk of serious injury or even death. She also points out that accidents can place a financial burden on society, particularly on emergency services and healthcare systems. On the other hand, Tom argues against a ban. He believes in personal freedom and the right of individuals to choose how they live their lives. He also highlights the psychological benefits of extreme sports, such as building confidence and resilience. These are the key ideas we can use to answer this question about whether dangerous extreme sports should be banned. Now, here's something very important for IELTS. This same question can be answered in different valid ways. First, I'll show you a balanced, partially disagree essay, where we accept that extreme sports are risky, but argue that banning them is not the best solution. Then, I'll show you a complete disagree essay, where we strongly reject the idea of a ban altogether. Let's start with the balanced approach. In this type of answer, we show that we understand both sides of the argument. We acknowledge that extreme sports can be dangerous, but we argue that banning them is not the most effective solution. Before we start writing, it's important to plan the structure of the essay. In the introduction, we paraphrase the question and show partial disagreement. In the first body paragraph, we explain why some people support a ban, focusing on safety and social costs. In the second body paragraph, we argue that a ban is unnecessary and that regulation is a better alternative. Finally, in the conclusion, we restate our position and summarize our main arguments. Let's begin by writing the introduction. In a balanced answer, the introduction has two jobs: to paraphrase the question and to clearly show partial disagreement. It is often suggested that high-risk sports such as skydiving and rock climbing are too perilous and ought to be prohibited by law in order to prevent unnecessary loss of life. While I acknowledge that these activities carry significant safety risks for participants, I believe that strict regulation is a far more appropriate response than an outright ban. In the first sentence, we paraphrase the question using more formal language. In the second sentence, we clearly show partial disagreement by accepting the risks but rejecting a complete ban. In the first body paragraph, we explain why some people believe dangerous extreme sports should be banned. Admittedly, there are valid concerns regarding the physical dangers involved and the resulting cost to society. When a serious accident occurs in a remote location, it often necessitates a taxpayer-funded rescue operation involving helicopters and specialized medical teams. Critics argue that it is unreasonable for the public to bear the financial burden of an individual's decision to engage in a high-risk, adrenaline-seeking activity. From this perspective, a ban is viewed as a practical means of protecting both individuals from extreme danger and public healthcare systems from avoidable strain. Let's quickly look at what each part of this paragraph is doing. The paragraph begins with a concession, using the word admittedly, to show that we recognize the opposing viewpoint. The next sentence explains the practical problem in detail, focusing on serious accidents and the cost of emergency rescue services. We then develop this idea further by explaining why critics believe it is unfair for taxpayers to pay for these risks. Finally, we summarize this view by showing why some people see a ban as a logical solution. Throughout the paragraph, we explain the opposing argument clearly, but we do not support it. In the second body paragraph, we present our own view and explain why banning extreme sports is not necessary. This is where we respond directly to the safety and cost concerns discussed in the previous paragraph. However, I would argue that prohibiting these sports overlooks the substantial psychological benefits they can provide. For many enthusiasts, pushing personal limits in a high-stakes environment helps to develop mental resilience, discipline, and a sense of achievement that traditional sports may not offer. Rather than imposing a total ban, governments could introduce mandatory high-risk insurance and stricter licensing requirements for instructors. Such measures would ensure that the financial costs of emergency rescues are borne by participants themselves, while maintaining high professional safety standards. By combining personal accountability with regulation, it is possible to protect public resources without unnecessarily restricting individual freedom. We begin with, however, to clearly signal a contrast with the previous paragraph. The first sentence introduces our main position, arguing that banning extreme sports ignores their psychological benefits. The next sentence develops this idea by explaining how these activities build resilience, discipline, and a sense of achievement. We then respond directly to the cost argument by proposing mandatory insurance and stricter licensing. The final sentence summarizes our solution, showing how regulation can protect public resources without restricting personal freedom. Finally, let's look at the conclusion. In a balanced answer, the conclusion restates your opinion and summarizes the main points clearly. To conclude, although the hazards associated with extreme sports are genuine, they do not justify total prohibition. I believe that through a combination of education, insurance, and personal responsibility, individuals should be permitted to pursue these activities safely rather than being restricted by the state. The first sentence restates the main point. Extreme sports are risky, but this risk alone does not justify a ban. The second sentence summarizes the solutions and reinforces our position. Education, insurance, and personal responsibility allow people to participate safely. Notice how we end the essay by clearly restating our partial disagreement and leaving a strong, balanced impression. Now that we've seen a balanced, partial disagree essay, it's time to look at a different approach, a complete disagree model. In a complete disagree essay, we do not support the idea of banning extreme sports at all. Every body paragraph argues against the ban. Here's the structure for the complete disagree essay. The introduction paraphrases the question and clearly states that we fully reject a ban. Body paragraph 1 argues personal freedom and the right to choose. Body paragraph 2 explains the benefits of extreme sports and how regulation effectively manages risks. Finally, the conclusion restates our position and summarizes the main reasons against a total ban. Let's start with the introduction. In a complete disagree essay, the introduction has two main purposes: to paraphrase the question and to clearly state that we fully reject the idea of banning extreme sports. Here is the model introduction we will use for this essay. Some people argue that high-risk activities like skydiving and rock climbing are so dangerous that they should be banned entirely to protect participants and society. I strongly disagree with this view. While extreme sports carry inherent risks, the benefits they provide, combined with effective regulation, make a total ban unnecessary. Let's look at body paragraph 1. This paragraph focuses on personal freedom and the right to choose, showing why banning extreme sports is unnecessary. A complete prohibition would unjustly restrict personal freedom. Individuals have the right to make informed decisions about how they spend their leisure time, even if these choices involve risk. Extreme sports participants are usually fully aware of the dangers and voluntarily accept them. To single out these activities for a ban while allowing other risky behaviors, such as motor racing, mountain hiking, or skiing, would be inconsistent and unfair. Furthermore, banning extreme sports could create a slippery slope, suggesting that the government can restrict any activity simply because it carries a potential risk, which would undermine personal autonomy in many aspects of daily life. Now let's move to body paragraph 2. This paragraph explains why extreme sports are valuable and why regulation, not a ban, is the best approach. Extreme sports also offer substantial psychological and mental benefits that cannot be replicated by conventional activities. Participants develop resilience, discipline, self-confidence, and a sense of achievement by challenging their limits. In addition, the sustained focus, strategic decision-making, and problem-solving required in these sports can improve mental alertness and the ability to perform under pressure. Rather than banning these sports, governments can implement strict safety regulations, mandatory training, licensing requirements for instructors, and insurance policies. Such measures minimize risk, protect public resources, and allow individuals to continue participating safely while still enjoying the unique rewards these high adrenaline activities provide. Finally, let's look at the conclusion. The conclusion has two main purposes: restate your position clearly and summarize the main arguments without introducing new information. In conclusion, while dangerous extreme sports involve real risks, banning them entirely would be unnecessary and disproportionate. Personal freedom means that individuals should not be prohibited from choosing to participate in extreme sports, while effective regulation and education make a total ban unnecessary. Therefore, I strongly reject the idea of a total ban. That wraps up our lesson on tackling this Task 2 question about extreme sports. We explored two approaches: a balanced, partial disagree essay and a complete disagree essay. You saw how to plan the essay, write each paragraph, and develop strong arguments throughout. Thanks for watching. You can find the debate transcript and both model essays on our website.